broadcasting live. The Racket is the voice of Torrens University Australia. It's the voice of Think Education, and it's the voice of the Media Design School. It's all about amplifying our voices. So we're talking about our 19,000 students, our 2,000 staff, and our thousands of alumni. And where do I fit in? Well, I'm Bryce Ives, and I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs and Communications, and I'm hosting episode 1. As a community, I know that we are passionate, we are bold, we are compassionate, we're visionary, we are agitators. And the Racket will uncover our stories. It will help make new connections. Today, we're focusing on mental health, on well-being and recovery. Now, underpinning Torrens University is our most important value, that we begin and we end with people. And we're watching images right now around the world of citizens who are hitting the streets and demanding seemingly a simple call to action. Black Lives Matter. Now, I want to say up front, racism and the oppression of any people or any community has no place in our world. And sadly, the injustices that people are fighting for in the US also plague Australia and New Zealand. And I'm talking about brutality. I'm talking about brutality and violence against Indigenous people, against other minorities, and that this is often ignored and worse, justified. And now with our borders being closed, it is a dangerous and sometimes hateful time, and hateful rhetoric is not needed. So one of our other values is to be global. And we want our community at Torrens University and Think Education and the Media Design School in New Zealand to know that we will support you, whether you're a student, you're a staff member or a community, especially our vulnerable and our underrepresented. And this energy comes, of course, at an exceptional time where everything feels heightened. So as COVID-19 continues to change the world, the way that we meet our friends and families, the way we study, the way we work, the way we engage with one another, well, this is a time when people are feeling stretched, feeling emotional, feeling tired. It's a time when our own health, our well-being is being challenged. And this is all happening with extraordinary global events around us. I jump back to the beginning of the year and I think about the bushfires that ravished Australia. I think about how COVID-19 has impacted on my own friends and my own family, on our mental health and well-being. So today's episode feels extremely pertinent right now at this very moment. And we have 3 exceptional stories to share with you. But it would be remiss of me not to say where I am today. I'm live from Queenscliff in the Bellarine Peninsula in beautiful regional Victoria. Queenscliff is a gorgeous coastal town. It's one of my favorite places to come, to relax, to stop, and to breathe. And I often do it just at the mouth of Port Phillip Bay, just near Point Lonsdale here. Why am I here? Well, actually, this week and next week, I'm taking slow weeks. I'm focusing on my own health and well-being, and I'm talking with my friends and family down here. So I'm here to revitalize and refresh, refocus, reimagine. And I feel like this conversation is exactly the conversation that I want to have today. Now, I also want to say thank you to the Queenscliff Gallery and Workshop. So behind me here, we're upstairs at the Queenscliff Gallery and Workshop, and it's where we're doing the broadcast today. So a big thanks to them. So let's get cracking. In March this year, we made a huge decision, which was all of our students and staff would work online. And we did this in response to COVID-19. And it wasn't full smooth sailing, but what has impressed me so much is how our campus communities, how our staff and our students have remained connected during this time. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about online cooking classes. I'm talking about daily meditation sessions. I'm talking about virtual Friday drinks. Our staff and our students have gone out of their way to connect with one another, and I want to say thank you for that. And here we are now at the beginning of June, and we're moving into the second half of 2020. What's in store? Well, let's begin by having a look at a video which involves 40 of our students. It was filmed in Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, Adelaide, and Auckland. This video is how we begin and we end with people. And let's go to it.
We begin and end with people.
In this time of chaos, challenge and change, we have learned that what is most important is people.
Me, you,
Us. Our people will reinvent, reimagine, reinterpret their lives, yours, mine.
on a local scale and on a global scale, so as to ensure connection.
So as to ensure that everyone goes to work, everyone has a choice, everyone has an edge, and that
Everyone can change their world.
as the world around us stops right now, we stir. As the world around us rests right now, we rouse.
As the world around us pauses right now, we awaken and we begin to move forward.
From hibernation to creation, restlessness to excellence, monotonous to bold.
Expanding on last year, building on last month, growing from last week, transforming from yesterday and always.
Learning. From each other, about each other, and with each other.
We begin and end with people.
First, I want you to meet one of our Torrens University alumni. From high school dropout to spending a period of time homeless, fast forward to those mentioned life-changing 4 days in a mental health ward. So now a Bachelor of Business graduate who is constantly challenging and battling his demons, but does so in such a generous and compassionate and open way. Paul Grainger is really someone who is an exceptional storyteller, but also a fierce and proud advocate when it comes to mental health, well-being and awareness. He's very open about his story, which is interwoven with frequent tales of anxiety and depression, but is also bound to hope and, most importantly, resilience. His story is one that resonates with many, including me, and one that may be surprising considering the first part of his introduction. So let's meet Paul at our Love Your Story, Love Our Story event, which happened last year in Sydney, and then get Paul onto the Racket.
I was now 23, I was living in Sydney, and still I was asking myself the same bloody question. What is my life worth? What is the point of these continued struggles? And frankly, why does anyone give a shit? This time it felt very different to that dark night 7 years earlier. This time I tried to beat this and it felt like it had beaten me. It felt like now there was one option left. I got in my car, not knowing where I was going, somewhere away, I didn't know. But I ended up at the Prince of Wales Emergency Department in Randwick. I parked in a 1 hour zone and I wouldn't leave for 4 days. How had it come to this? How? Because I was still telling myself the same bullshit stories. Under this veil of success and dreams and adventure, I would still look at myself in the mirror and ask, am I worthy? Am I good enough? And I could never seem to find many or any reasons to suggest that I was.
Paul, how are you doing?
I am very well, Bryce. It's so great to be a part of this event. Good to see you again as well.
Tell me, like the last couple of months, I don't even know how to put them into words, but can you be more eloquent? How have the last couple of months been?
It's been a huge challenge, as it has been for all of us. And I've reflected recently as to what the hardest thing about lockdown has been for me. The hardest thing I think really has been able to keep some kind of consistency. Some days it's felt okay. I felt like I'm doing good. I'm motivated. I'm connecting with friends. And then other days, I can't get out of bed, and it's that period where you're just binging Netflix and waiting for the next week to start. So for me, it's been hard to find that balance, but it's kind of taking it each day as it comes.
And you're doing all of this, and at the same time, you've been finishing your studies with us. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So it's a crazy whirlwind. Graduated from my degree, started a new job.
In the middle of lockdown.
In the middle of lockdown, yeah. So it's very contrasting emotions. There's obviously a lot of challenging things about it, but there's also some incredible opportunities. So it's been interesting juggling those competing emotions.
So in your Love Your Story, you asked, what stories are we telling ourselves? Are they healthy? Are they helping? Or are they holding us back and keeping us down? And then you explained how you began to tell a different story about yourself. So I want to ask, first of all, what was the story that you were once telling yourself? So when you go back now, years ago, and how has that story changed?
So the story I told myself for far too long was one that I wasn't good enough, a story where I wasn't worthy. And at one point I actually had, a whole heap of pages in my journals filled with things that I had failed at, things I dropped out of, friendships that I'd, ruined, relationships that I'd burned. And it was, I guess perpetuating this negative narrative. And I guess through that, I came to this crisis point and a turning point, which we'll discuss further. But, in that moment, it was realizing and having the awareness that I needed to stop, to pause, to reflect, and to realize that if I was going to, begin writing a new story, I needed to give myself a better foundation. And that was actually when I started studying. It was realizing that there were some skills and some parts to my life that I was missing, and it was slowing down and giving myself time to start writing that new story for myself. And that's been the journey that I've been on these last 4 years, really.
And were you ever kind to yourself in any of the lists, or was it always? I mean, it sounds extraordinary to hear that, Paul, that you were writing down all of the relationships that you had destroyed. Did you ever write down a positive list, or was it always?
Well, that's the thing, right?
All of the bad things.
Yeah, and I think, journaling's been a huge part of my life for the last 10, 15 years now. And what journaling does for me is it gives me the opportunity to look back and to actually examine some of the ways that I was thinking in the past. Putting it down on paper lets me look back and reflect. And there was actually a point where I looked back and I actually started seeing this negative, these negative lists, and there wasn't anything positive in there, exactly as you say. And it was that moment was actually eye-opening in itself. It was like, why am I not able to see the positives and to focus on the positives? So really, just even in that process of journaling, I was able to look back and see that, to recognize that. And now when I look back and compare what I'm writing now versus what I was writing then, it also gives me a reason to celebrate. I can see how far I've come, which is, and that perpetuates now a much, much healthier cycle moving forward.
So what do you write now?
Now I begin each day with something that I'm grateful for and something that I'm proud of, and I focus on that.
And so you do that as a daily practice. You every day you'll sit down and you'll write one thing that you're grateful for.
Yeah, grateful for, and something that I'm proud of, something that I can celebrate. And just off camera, there's a whole stack of journals from the last 10 years. And I can look at that evolution of thought, which is pretty cool.
I always, when I talk with you, I always feel, I'll be really honest about this right now. You are such a confident, good-looking human being, right? Like you are, for me, like every single, like perfume commercial I've ever watched of like, a very certain type of male physique, and like you're strikingly handsome, and also you're so well spoken and articulate. And so, I think that the other part of this is, of course, looks can be deceiving, and like behind every facade, there are other things that are happening as well. So, I mean, I wonder if you can reflect on that for a second, like, and I mean this in the sense that you do strike me that you look confident and you've got it together, but maybe that's not always the case.
It's not always the case, and I think it's a really important reminder that when we think about days like Are You Okay Day, it's like sometimes when we're hurting and when we're feeling pain, we become very good at putting on a front, and it's more important than ever, and it's so important to check in with your friends and your family, regardless of how they might seem externally. I'm very philosophical and introspective, so I can examine myself and understand, exactly what I need. And I'm now very confident in communicating that with close friends when I might not be feeling, the best. But, I really believe that if there's any conversation that I can add value to in life, it's going to come from this place of real passion. And, my journey with anxiety and depression and a family history of suicide, like I know that if there's anything that I'm going to engage in, it's going to be this space. And, even if I might feel like I have some inner demons and some doubts, I know my value now, and I can communicate that confidently in, any situation.
I guess I'm also reflecting on it because I don't know about you, but I regularly feel like a fraud, particularly with my job now and the job title, and then I hear people introduce me and they sometimes read out my bio, and I always think, as they're reading out my bio, I could actually write another bio. So like they'll read all of the successes, Paul, all of the massive achievements. But equally, I could talk about how I've been rock bottom so many times in my life. I could talk about all of the projects that didn't work, and the relationships that went into different directions. I could talk about my own struggles in terms of like identity and who I am. But it's interesting how we always focus on the success. And yet it takes all of this to make us human. It is, you stand in front of me as someone who is well-rounded because you've actually been on a journey, and a journey is never smooth sailing, is it?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I'm very proud of the things that I've been able to overcome. And, when we reflect on these experiences and how they can potentially add value to our lives, that's a long process to see that application. And a little, something that I've done in the last few years is starting to, reframe these experiences, from my past or even in my present, as if I'm writing a book for my life. And I've written the last chapter of my book, and I know how the story ends, and I'm very excited by the last chapter. And I think that by reframing some of the struggles that we have during our life, it's going to make for some amazing chapters in the middle. And when this book goes to be published, it's going to be a bestseller, not for the last chapter, but for everything in between. And it's taking that process to reframe it, which has been really powerful for me.
So there was a process to reframe it. And I do think, you know that I love telling stories, and storytelling is exceptionally powerful. I do believe we become the stories we tell. Like I truly believe that.
Yeah.
But to get to that point where you could reframe, was there a moment that led to that process? Was there something that happened, or a particular moment where you went, I have to actually change gear here?
There's been a few big moments over the years where I've been challenged to do that. The first time that I felt at rock bottom was when I was 16, and that was the first time that I began to have suicidal thoughts. And in that moment, something just came over me, and I was like, whoa, like what's going on here? I need to do something. And it was in that moment where I thought that I need to give this pain a purpose in my life. I need to be able to channel that and use it to make a difference. And since then, over the last 11 years, I've been trying to figure out how to do that. And that's the healing process, and that's the learning process. And, fast forward 7 years from that moment, I had another crisis moment when I was, now living in Sydney, and I felt like I'd tried everything to navigate this process, and I hadn't been able to succeed. And, in that moment, I felt like I had nowhere else to turn. And somehow I managed to find I don't know how I managed to find what I managed to find, but I walked into the doors of the emergency department at the hospital in Sydney, and I said, I don't know what to do. I just need some help. And, these moments are just, recognizing that we can't do it on our own. And the process of reaching out to these support mechanisms help with that process of reframing it and getting us back on track.
And I just want to remind people as they're watching, there are a number of websites and phone numbers. So there's beyondblue.org.au, which is a fantastic organisation, Paul, and I know you're heavily involved in it.
Yeah.
And of course, Lifeline, which I feel like Lifeline is one of the great unsung heroes of Australian life. 13114 is the number there. Now, Paul, I do want to come to a point before that you have lived experience of suicide. So what would you like us to know about it?
What would I like you to know about suicide?
If anything.
No, I think, suicide is the end. If there's two things I can say about suicide, it's that firstly, if you're feeling like you just don't know where to turn, and as I mentioned, I've been in a situation where you feel like you've exhausted all of the other options and you think like this is the only option left. In that moment, there are still options. And when I walked into the door of that hospital that day, I was more terrified than ever before. And that was probably what I was most terrified of is being that vulnerable and accepting that kind of help. And I was just blown away by the love and support that I received in that department in the 4 days that I spent there. And that meant that I didn't need to be fearful of, if I do get to that moment, there's still going to be people there for me. So that's the first thing I'll say. And the second thing I'll say is that as a society and within our organization and other organizations and in schools, we really have a responsibility to educate people on mental wellness. I think often the conversation about mental health links to mental illness, but when we talk about mental health, we really need to be talking about, what kind of society do we want to live in where people are mentally healthy. And I think that's kind of the direction that we need to head and the conversations that we need to have.
And we also have to continue to have the conversations loudly and out in the open as well. I mean, even asking that question then, I felt nervous. You know, like the moment that we talk about suicide, I feel like, should I be asking this right now? Should we be having this conversation? And of course, it's so important, because without that visibility, we can't be true. We can't have an honest conversation.
Exactly.
Paul, you mentioned in your Love Your Story that you thought you could tell your story by yourself, but you acknowledge that you learned that sometimes you just need a little help. You know, I mean, like the Beatles said it, didn't they? We get by with a little help from my friends. Can you tell me about a couple of the major players who have swooped in and provided that little bit of help that you needed?
It's quite a long list now, but there's a few people that immediately come to mind, and the commonality across each of them is their willingness to listen, and their willingness to listen without judgment and without feeling like they need to prescribe some kind of solution. You know, some of the best conversations I've had have been, here's how I'm feeling, this is what I need. And then they say, okay, you know, they don't need to be in my face trying to fix me, but I know that they're going to be there and to support me with whatever I think that I need. And, you know, I've got a really good friend who's, you know, back over in WA at the moment with all of the lockdowns, who I'll keep in touch with. And he's been a huge supportive part of that. I've had positive and negative experiences with bosses at work, but there's a couple of managers who just absolutely stand out for me when I was in, you know, some of my darkest hours, and they were so supportive and realized that, you know, the business isn't everything, the people are the business, and they were hugely helpful in that. And then I would also say most recently, my success coach at Torrens Uni was hugely helpful in helping me to navigate some of my demons and, you know, help me to progress from my diploma into my degree. And now I'm working with my success coach as a student mentor. So it's, you know, these people have played such an important role, and I'm so grateful.
If you feel comfortable, who is the success coach? It would be lovely to acknowledge them.
So my success coach, who I've been working with for 2.5 years now, and the irony here, thinking about online study at the moment, is I've never actually met her. We've entirely had our relationship as a coaching thing online, and her name is Andrea Gonzalez, based here in Brisbane. So yeah, it's incredible to think that we've been working together so long, and she's had such an impact, and we've never actually met face to face in person, which is pretty cool.
Now, you have told me a number of times that you're not confident really speaking in public, that you would rather not be, you know, in the foyer of a building, at the opening of an event, in a conference. But, you know, as I said, like right at the beginning, looks can sometimes be deceiving, and you are a powerful orator. And also, you know, I feel your force, I feel your energy in a room when I'm with you. And I've also, you know, I feel that connection just even today, just on this forum. You're now a speaker for Beyond Blue. You're also a student mentor with Torrens, and you're a regular guest speaker at university events. And now taking up this role of a student mentor, which I think is really critical, because one of the things we want to see at Torrens University, at Think Education, and at the Media Design School is greater connectivity between staff and students, that we become one community, and that also that student leadership absolutely thrives in the coming years. So to tell me a bit about this new role. Yeah, so for someone who doesn't like the spotlight too much, you're suddenly in it in a major way, but obviously it's on your own terms. Why are you doing this, and why does it matter?
It matters because students need to know that they're not alone, and how they're feeling right now. There's ways that we can support them. So my role as a student mentor sees me, specifically, I work with the success coach team in undergraduate business and hospitality students. And in the 6 weeks that I've been in the role now, I've contacted and spoken with maybe 100, 150 students one-on-one. And it's been so eye-opening, being able to understand some of the challenges that they're facing in their lives at the moment, and also in adapting to online learning. And it's really cool for me to be able to connect my life experience and my passion for supporting people with their mental health, and being able to connect, I guess, the impact that my educational journey has had with these new students. And for me, it's really just joining all of the dots. Everything that I'm passionate about, now I can connect with these students one-on-one within an amazing team of coaches who all share this, incredible vision for being able to support our students. So, I'm so stoked and so grateful to be able to have this opportunity in such a challenging time.
Now, for me, if I was to be really honest, what we're doing between Torrens University Think Education and the Media Design School, it is a whole different approach to education. So you've talked about success coaches, like the small classrooms, the intimate campuses, the online experience. And, we get some things right, and we're still learning in other regards. And one of the things which I'm absolutely committed to is making sure we have a student experience that is second to none. But of course, It's about everybody contributing and us building this as well over time. So be honest with me right now, in terms of COVID-19 and this year, which has just been like no one could have anticipated it. What is the student experience right now, and what does it need to become?
Fantastic question, far out. So on my first day in this role, I remember contacting students, and I think I had 4 or 5 in a row who just spilled out their life story to me. And they'd lost jobs, or their partners had lost jobs. They're stranded here. They're feeling stressed. They've got family back home in their home country who are, potentially at risk. And obviously at the time there was, a lot of uncertainty about transport and how big this was going to get. How people navigated study during that, study was, I guess, secondary to that because of these challenges. So that's one part of the experience. But the thing that really encourages me and really inspires me is how willing and how engaged students are with the resources that we're providing to them to help them through this process. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So only this week, I was in a workshop put on by the academic skills team on online learning. And we had a 76-year-old lady actually come to this session and wanting to learn some of the skills it takes to be an effective online learner.
So one of our students?
One of Torrens' students, yeah, which is just incredible. This is the first time she's ever studied online, and she was engaging with these online workshops. Unfortunately, she was running on dial-up still, so I think the connection was still a bit of a challenge. But, another example, the success coaches and I put on a workshop last night on how to manage group assignments online, which is another hugely, important topic for students. And we had a student tune in from Ecuador where it was 4 a.m. So the student in Ecuador at 4 a.m. had tuned into this workshop so that she could better understand how to manage a group assignment online. So I'm just so inspired by how students are engaging with the resources that we're providing to help them. And I think if we can continue doing that and continue being proactive and innovative in some of these resources we're creating for them, that's ultimately not only going to help with their study and employability goals, but it's going to help them a lot with their mental health during this time too.
Now, you have been making a podcast as well. So I want to take a moment. Let's have a listen to the podcast you recently produced.
Online learning in itself as a delivery platform has many kind of inbuilt lessons in its own. So whilst we're learning about different topics and learning different subjects, we're also learning about how do we collaborate with people online, how do we maintain that self-discipline, and how do we keep that schedule and that routine when it's all down to us.
So the other thing which I love, Paul, is you've been keeping active during this time. And it's not just been what you would usually expect. You've been staying active, running, doing yoga. And I want to have a quick look at something else that you've been recently up to, because this has motivated me a lot. Can we just quickly go to this video?
It is day 2 of the 2020 push-up challenge, raising funds and awareness for Headspace.
Okay, so
Wow, I wasn't expecting to see that. That's awesome.
why all the push-ups?
So it's been challenging with all the gym closures, and physical exercise is a huge part of how I've been able to keep mentally healthy.
I want to say I did not want you to see below what you can see right now. This is not. I put my jeans on today, and this is not a good look.
It's it's being able to, for me, I saw this challenge come up online, raising funds and awareness for Headspace, which is the youth National Health Foundation, National Mental Health Foundation. And this challenge was 3,046 push-ups in 21 days. And that's one push-up for each reported suicide in 2018. So this was an incredible initiative that I just couldn't miss, not only, to have some kind of exercise to do that was going to be motivating for me in lockdown and something that was accessible, but also something that was linked to such an important cause. And there were tens of thousands of people around Australia getting involved, and it was so great to feel a part of that community. And I know for my physical health and maybe keeping me in shape during lockdown, it helped, but also in having that challenge to do each day for my own mental health has been really, really powerful too.
So, Paul, I'm not going to do the push-ups, but I will, because it's not going to be a pleasant sight for anybody that I live with anyway. They're not going to enjoy that. But I will walk the steps, and I will commit to continuing to try and tell a better story about myself to myself.
Yeah. And
I will also take one other thing from this conversation, which is sometimes it is just, the simplest of exchanges. The fact that you talked about, it was those 4 days in hospital. You wouldn't think to yourself that it would be a nurse or, a doctor or someone, a cleaner, just one moment that, someone says something, and sometimes that's all it is. That's what we mean by connection. That's what we mean by care, and how important those things are. But, Paul, before we wrap up, there are going to be students watching this, and staff members and community members who are going to be at different points of feeling shit. Okay. Yeah. And, if you could say one thing right now, or even, like one place where you would refer them to, like, what would be the one thing you'd say? Where is the one place you would refer them to?
The one place I would refer them to, and that I would encourage everyone to engage with, would be some of the resources available by Beyond Blue. I think it's our responsibility, everyone's responsibility, to really educate ourselves on, what to look for in others and ourselves. I think that's a really, really good place to start. And the second thing that I would want everyone to leave this conversation remembering is that this is a really challenging time. Life in general is really challenging. And I think the most important thing is really to be radically kind to ourselves. You know, we're doing an amazing job in navigating life, and we need to give credit to ourselves for doing the best we can with what we've got. And being kind to ourselves through that process is so important, and not feeling like things need to be different. You know, we are where we are, you know, when we need to be for a reason, and that will become clear. If it's not clear now, it will become clear in time. So, you know, be kind and be patient.
Paul, I'm going to say thank you so much for your honesty, your sincerity, your compassion, your willingness to actually lead the conversations that must be had. Please continue to be radically kind to yourself as well. And I'm hoping you can host one of these editions of the Racket moving forward. So be on
Absolutely.
standby. And hopefully you'll get a cool graphic as well when you host one of the next editions.
I'll get some cool glasses to try and challenge yours.
I was going to change them today, but there you go. So Paul Grainger, thank you so much. We'll come back to you later on.
Awesome. Thanks, Bryce.
We're now going to go to Max Hacker. Max Hacker has been with us for over 4 years now. He's currently a learning facilitator, and he works in the Bachelor of Naturopathy and Nutrition and for mental health in education at Torrens University. He also runs a clinic privately and is a practicing mental health nurse. Now, welcome, Max. I was saying before, you do look today like an ABC grandstand broadcaster from the 1990s when they used to broadcast VFL football. I like your headset there. Can you begin? I found this fascinating. What is the connection between mental health and naturopathy?
Thanks, Bryce, and thanks for having everyone here today. I'd want to start as well by thanking Paul as well for the fascinating and really genuine overview and insights that we've all really appreciated hearing. So the naturopathy obviously is a form of natural medicine using nutrition, herbal medicine, and other natural modalities to improve people's health. So it has a really good use in terms of mental health by accompanying Western medicine as well, in terms of medications or other treatments that might be used for mental health conditions, that naturopathy can actually take things to another level in terms of improving person's health. Nutrient deficiencies, vitamins, minerals, certain herbal medicines can make a big difference. There's good research behind that as well, which isn't always known. So it's a really useful modality to add on to the mental health treatments for people.
It's funny because there's a couple of vitamins that I take every day, and when I don't take them, it's interesting, because you might forget for a few days, and then suddenly I'll say to my partner, "I'm feeling crap today," and they'll turn around and say, like, "Have you been doing that morning set of vitamins?" And of course, every time the answer is like, "Oh, I have forgot," or actually, it's sort of, just not happened. But there is a direct connection for me between, these couple of, things that you can do for yourself to actually not just be physically better, but mentally healthier as well.
Yeah, exactly.
What was your journey into mental health nursing?
So I was already a naturopath, and I decided to study nursing. And in Australia, nursing, when you study nursing, you study all different types of nursing, all the medical stuff, all the surgical nursing, mental health nursing, it's all part of the one degree. And the mental health was the most interesting for me. I found it very, very fascinating learning about the different mental health conditions, schizophrenia, psychosis, bipolar, and depression, anxiety, the whole spectrum, eating disorders, personality disorders. I was fascinated by it. And so my journey was, I applied to become a mental health nurse in my new graduate program, which is your first year as a nurse working in hospitals. So that was my pathway, and that's been my path ever since.
Now, not only that, what do you love about teaching? Because teaching is now, another feather in your cap. So it's quite extraordinary.
Well, because we're here at Torrens, we're only just starting our Bachelor of Nursing. I haven't actually taught in the nursing yet because the students aren't up to the mental health subjects yet. I did write the mental health nursing subject. And so that was a big job and an interesting experience as well. And so from a nursing point of view, I've done the content writing. From a naturopathy nutrition point of view, the thing I love the most about teaching is really coaching students to become the best healthcare practitioners that they can be, to open up new opportunities for them, and to really maximize what they can get out of the degrees, and the fascinating information that we learn in the degrees, and use that for themselves and for their careers.
But Max, also, like, how cool is this? This is the newest university in Australia in 20 years. And this is the first new nursing degree in Australia, I think, in over a decade. And you're actually getting to write the subject about this thing that's so important. And I also think about it in terms of like the demographics of our university as a global university. 114 nationalities we have studying with us. So the students who do this course, who will be studying this, actually going to be going all around the world covering this or carrying this knowledge with them as well. I mean, that's totally, what an opportunity for you. And how cool is that?
Yeah, amazing. Right.
One of the things which you've been doing during COVID-19 has been working for people quarantined in the hotels. So we've been watching it, on the nightly news outside, the journalist standing, people who've arrived in the country who are in 14 days quarantined. But you've actually been in the hotels where guests have flagged with you the need for mental health care. I'm wondering if you can tell me what that experience has been like and why it's been important.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's been it's an interesting experience. So obviously, Torrens Uni, as every other uni, has gone online now. So originally I set up my home office and was just getting into the mindset of being at home all the time, and then suddenly there's this massive demand for nurses, especially mental health nurses, to go into the hotels. We do physically go to the hotel. There's an enormous team of medical staff there for care of all the guests. There's the whole place is basically locked down with police and the army, security as well. So we liaise with all the different groups there as well. And so it's been fascinating going there, and you talk to the other nurses and the doctors about which patients need, or which guests I should say, need extra support. So I'll get a list given to me of the people who need mental health support for whatever reasons that they're needing. And I'll get on the phone. I don't need to actually physically see them. I call them up and then talk to them about what it is that they need. So people are. It's been an interesting, sort of snapshot of human psychology, because some people with pre-existing mental health conditions, they've struggled a lot through 14 days of quarantine. And the 14 days here in Australia has usually been off the back of already at least a month, if not 2 months of quarantine overseas already. And then they come into Australia and they've got 2 more weeks. So people with pre-existing anxiety or depression, claustrophobia, they've been using, they've been needing lots of extra help, which I'm part of giving them that support. I talk to psychologists as well, social workers, New South Wales disaster management team. So that's part of the Department of Communities and Justice. And so my role as a mental health nurse as well is to facilitate all the, get all the best support to those guests as much as possible.
One of the key words which I feel like has come into my vocabulary over the past few months is telehealth. I didn't know what telehealth was before COVID-19, but I'm hearing about it over all the time now. And I know that, I mean, this is something which, yourself, Max, and others are practitioners in. Like, we're now training our students in it. Can you describe why telehealth has been so important during this time as well?
Yeah, for obviously it's part of the whole social isolation system to prevent, to stop us from, spreading COVID-19. It's still just as good, really, in most scenarios I've found, whether it's counselling or even GP clinics or other medical services. I find telehealth to be just as good for myself in the hotels. People, some of the time they just talking to someone on the phone is the thing that makes the biggest difference in terms of how they're feeling that day. They might be feeling flat or anxious or having, not just feeling unsettled. Just talking to somebody is often, this is what guests have told me, is often the thing that helps the most. Sometimes I go through different techniques, deep breathing or visualization, meditation, different things like that as well, specific techniques as well, which has been which can be useful. But it's often it's just that human, not contact, but that human connection over the phone.
Okay, so tell me, what have you learned during this time?
Well, it's a good question. The ability to start something as massive as this whole coronavirus response, and specifically in the hotels, start something that massive and really fine tune it over time has been something that with all the medical staff and all those teams in the hotels working together, that's the ability to fine tune and work together over time is something that I've learned in terms of mistakes can be made, and then as long as we can fix them and improve going forward, then that's been one of the the interesting things as well that I've seen. Yeah.
So with the new Bachelor of Nursing degree and the new mental health subject, how are you feeling now the subject stands up in light of the COVID-19 work you're doing? Do you think it's going to prepare students for the real life scenario that you've just been through?
Well, it would help. They'll learn everything they need to know within that subject, but they would then need to apply it in each context. So the different techniques they learn in those mental health subjects, they could then apply, whether it's COVID-19 or someone having a panic attack in a hospital. They could learn it and apply it in that way as well.
And Max, I mean, I think it goes without saying how blessed, like I think we are as an institution, that we have real life practitioners like yourself who work with us to teach and to develop subjects, and at the same time maintain a strong connection to real life industry, to real life work. So you can actually bring that back into teaching, bring that into the classroom, into the experience with students, into curriculum design. And that creates, I think, often the most amazing energy when it comes to teaching and learning. So we're so lucky, but also how incredible for our students that they'll be able to have a conversation with someone who has literally been on the front lines during this extraordinary time.
Great. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you.
We're going to come back to you later on, but next up we have Lisa Walsh. And Lisa, where do I even begin? She's a qualified teacher, a psychologist, a member of the Australian Psychological Society, and all of her roles are centered on supporting and helping busy people work and live better. She's taught extensively in high schools and at university areas, and has really had a passion and a focus on mental health for over the last 20 years as an educator and a co-author. She was responsible for making sure first responders were well equipped with practical strategies on the front line. And we're talking particularly about those who were affected by bushfires earlier this year. And now, more recently, helping others manage and process the uncertainty of COVID-19. Now, Lisa, as I was saying when we were talking with Paul before, your bio is exceptionally intimidating. I've got to say, we are absolutely so fortunate to have you part of the Torrens University Australia community. What is your role? What is your official job title?
Well, I think anything around mental health, I am very passionate about, Bryce. My official job title is Program Director of Counselling and Community Services. So that enables me to oversee the staffing of lecturers within that department, and also to have an overview of shaping curriculum, which I am really passionate about, to make sure that we're providing content that actually has real life value.
And this is a growing program as well, and one where you remain connected with the students as they become alumni and they go out into the communities. So let me ask you this question. Why do you love what you do?
Just so many levels to that. But I think anything that I can do to help challenge stigma around mental illness and foster positive mental health and well-being, I will take it. So I feel in my role as program director, I'm able to do that with content and share my experience and expertise working as a psychologist for many years and lecturing students to then improve the outcomes for people and empower people to make really positive changes in their own lives.
2020 has been such a wild ride. I'm thinking about the beginning of the year where really you were potentially testing your boundaries. So you answered one of our other staff members, Andrea Hall's call to join her on the ground in Malakuta in beautiful East Gippsland, one of my favorite places in the world.
Stunning.
And of course, we witnessed over summer those harrowing images of families, of community members on the beach in Malakuta as the bushfires did what the bushfires do. And, what has been incredible is to learn about how you and Andrea and others have been in Malakuta straight after and in the days and the weeks and the months afterwards. And we're talking about how do you respond after something like that? And I mean, and I think about it, I because I've known the area really well, still feel sick by the images of it. But you were on the ground dealing with a very recent recovery effort. Can you set the scene for that and what you did and why it mattered?
Yeah, I think like you, Bryce, and the rest of the country and the world, was observing those bushfires and just felt so devastated by them. And in particular, Malakuta's bushfires went through twice, and the initial one was during New Year's Eve.
Yeah, that's right.
So people were fleeing, and down on the shore there, by a large lake that they've got, it was full of holidaymakers at a big campground. So seeing the images on camera, and then actually being very, very fortunate to be able to go down there and being flown in a small plane to then utilize my skills in the way that I know best. And I think a big part of that is holding space for other people. And I feel as a role as a psychologist or a counsellor that part of it is psychoeducation. So you educate people around putting words to the feelings that they're experiencing. So no matter what the experience is, you help them build vocabulary around that, because they might be feeling and they might be thinking, as a patient disclosed to me down there working out of a medical centre where I was based, I feel like I'm going crazy. And she said, I love a doodle, and I was doodling something and explaining it to her in a way of what happens with the brain when we're in chaos. And she said, and you could feel that shift in her. And she said, okay, I'm not going crazy. So this is normal. And I said, you're having a normal reaction to an extraordinary, devastating situation. And that was a person that had lost her home. And her grandparents had lost their home. The parents had managed to salvage their home. So you can't underestimate the effect of that. And yeah, just being able to, I feel honoured to have been able to hold the space and just maybe to signpost to some people down there to let them know, you know, that it's okay. And when did they know they were okay? And to try and bring them back down from that heightened state of real genuine fear into a place where they can actually get through their day and start to rebuild the community.
Bushfires in January and now COVID-19.
Yeah.
And then if I was to then add, sorry, one other thing, which is the last week on this planet and watching our fellow citizens hit the streets and really demand proper justice. What are you learning from 2020?
I think for me, I think gratitude is what I'm learning, is to really value those things that I can control. And I urge clients and staff and students to do the same, because there's so much at the moment, as you said, Bryce, even with the unfolding of what is happening in America and has ripple effects throughout the world. And we can get caught up in magnifying that. And I had a client say to me a couple of weeks ago, everything's terrible, you know, there's nothing good, look at what's happening. And I had to, you know, bring her back into actually, what can you control? What do you have control over? And then let's look at, what are you minimizing? And I've had to do that personally, you know, in my own life, because I was ending up magnifying some of that, and it can be really fear-based. But things are unpredictable at the moment. You know, my 12-year-old son says, you know, oh, Mum, there's going to be a second wave. I think in part because he hopes, because he's been homeschooled and now he's returned back to school, and he was loving the combo of surfing and a bit of schooling. But, you know, people are feeling that from, you know, the youngest to the eldest in our population. There is an unpredictability. So what we can control is, how do I start my day? What's my intention for the day? Because otherwise we can get into some really unhealthy patterns that, you know, I think all of us have had, you know, from that shift from working from home, you know, where we can end up, you might be ordering delivery stuff, you may not be eating as well, you might be snacking. So then stepping back from that and reflecting, going, actually, this isn't helpful. This isn't working. What do I need to change? And it might be something that seems small, but it has a significant effect on our well-being.
How's the experience of COVID-19 affected you personally?
Well, following on from that, I found myself for a few weeks there carbo loading like I was intending to do an ultra marathon, but I was just rolling into bed. So I had to kind of check in with myself and say, okay, this snacking and this not preparing my food, which I normally would do, is becoming a bit of a pattern. And also not having clear boundaries between my work day with working from home and then managing school-aged children. So making sure, you know, I joke to neighbours that I've got my desktop set up on the dining room table, you know, and they walk past and kind of wave, and, you know, I look like a professional gamer. And it's just encroaching on so much of my space. There's no gaming going on, but there's plenty of work. And I think, Bryce, what I do want to say is people are really feeling stressed. You know, people that are in work are feeling really grateful for work, you know, in Australia, New Zealand and beyond. But with that, I think people have been working so much harder than maybe they've ever been before. And they're more responsive to those Zoom meetings, to those emails. So there's a bit of an underlying fear around people's stability around work that's adding to, I would say, a collective fatigue for those group of people. And then we've also got other people that sadly, you know, have lost their work, or people that are on JobKeeper. So it's very different experience. And I think it's the individual experience of this. We're having a collective experience, but our experience of it is individual. And I love what you said at the start, Bryce, about having a slow week to recuperate and revitalize yourself, because I think allowing ourselves permission from that is really important, because I don't think there has been much time for a breather and for people to actually reflect.
I've had no breather this year. We've had no breather. And we've been reflecting on it as well. Like, we were watching the fires in Malakuta on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. Melbourne was under thick smoke at that point, so we hadn't been outside. We brought a new baby girl into the world on the 22nd of January. Like, those couple of weeks, we were literally indoors because the air quality was so bad. And then the year started, and like, I can remember like a week after Neo was born, we were suddenly sanitizing our hands. This thing was happening around the world. It wasn't, it was like, again, like almost like the film On the Beach, like the cloud is slowly moving. My gosh, it's so important to stop. And even this week, Lisa, if I'm honest with myself, I haven't stopped enough yet. Like, I'm still checking emails. I'm still, I was always committed to doing this, and that was booked in ages ago. But like, my gosh, like, I feel like there's also something about this time where it feels like, we've got to be on. Like, we've got to be on. So I'm even right now finding myself that I've got to somehow find a different pace, like to take from Paul before. Because actually write a narrative live, change the narrative right now.
Because Bryce, that is what we're experiencing. Is it's prevalent and it's persistent, but it's not sustainable. So you can keep going like that, and the first few months people have been acting in that way and being able to commit really well to their work, but that's not sustainable in the long term. This is a new way of working for many, so it's finding a rhythm and then adjusting it accordingly, because we can try something and then go, actually, this isn't working. For me, getting out in sunlight is really important, because I can I did think a couple of weeks ago, I thought, oh, this isn't good, this is a double whammy. We're coming into winter, which I struggle with, hence why I live in beautiful Sydney. But even still, and I moved from England, but even still, I struggle in the winter here with seasonal affective disorder. So I really recognise how important that vitamin D and getting out in light. And I thought, wow, I'm working from home and it's coming into winter. So I made some really clear habit changes around stopping the snacking, and getting up early or earlier, and getting out to get that kind of first hit of, and it's always a bonus when you get like 5,000 steps done before you sit at the computer.
That's right. I mean, I know that there are some examples of staff members who walk to work right now, so who literally leave their house, go for a walk, and then return. I do, hearing all of that, Lisa, I need to find a way to stop eating during MasterChef.
Yes.
We watch it as a kind of wind.
It makes you hungry.
And then we end up ordering ice cream because they're making ice cream every night. I know. I don't know if there's. We'll have to talk about that.
You may have to show You may have to find a different show, Bryce, if it's triggering you.
I had never ever watched any of this stuff until this year.
Yeah.
And I am now. I'm so with MasterChef. I think Poe is extraordinary. I love her.
She's a master. But I think there's some lovely things happening in that space. There's more people sitting down as a family. There's more people viewing those family kind of shows. There's more people connecting and also really loving their local area.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And and as I said right at the beginning, this has been like in years to come, they will do studies in terms of how businesses manage themselves. For us, 2,000 staff, 19,000 students, extremely challenging. But my gosh, like when you see things like the virtual yoga sessions.
Yeah.
I mean, it's extraordinary. We've really done so much to try and maintain connection, care, and check in. And I mean, I even think about, staff would just give me a call to say, how are you going?
Yeah.
The telephone has become so powerful again during this time.
And, a text message can mean so much. I think people can have fatigue in that virtual online space with Zooms and things like that. And that can affect, because different people use their energy differently. So you've got to find individually what gives you energy through this, in amongst, if it's lockdown, if it's certain things that you can't get hold of in the supermarket, whatever it is, we've then got to be really nimble and adapt as an individual, let alone as an organisation, as a university, but as an individual, we are constantly adapting. And I think we can have, as Paul said earlier, we can have good and bad days. And I think sometimes that's broken down into hours.
I'm going to touch on something which is extremely difficult to talk about. And it's a massive elephant in the room in Australia and around the world right now, and that's domestic violence. And only a few weeks ago, we received some devastating news about a case of suspected domestic violence with one of our own, a student from our Pyrmont campus in public health, Kamaljit Saidu. And she was one of us. She came to us to learn, and she had hopes and dreams. And I know that there are students and staff, and Lisa, I know you've connected with them as well, who are deeply impacted. They're grieving, and we're grieving. And I just think we might pause just for a moment and honour Kamaljit. And we'll just take just a moment. So the elephant in the room then is, as we're a school, we are a community. In schools, transformation happens. That's why we're committed to education. So when we think about domestic abuse, or when we think about suicide, or when we think about mental health or mental well-being, it feels like there's so much more we need to do as a community. I'm talking about formally in curriculum and learning and research. I'm talking about informally in the exchanges we have with one another, in the design of campuses, in the way we welcome students. For you right now, Lisa, if there was one thing that we could do well as a community in the next 6 months to begin the bigger stuff, because what I'm talking about is I want to see major change, but we need a step to get to that. What would it be?
I think, Bryce, we've evolved so much in this space, and as you said, I think so many people have been touched by that tragic passing of Kamaljit. It's been very upsetting for so many people, and I think we've evolved so much in this space of domestic abuse in Australia and beyond, in terms of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and there's much more awareness than what there ever has been before, which I think is amazing. So we're beginning to change that narrative. There's more adverts popping up, there's more initiatives, there's national frameworks in place, which all helps to trickle down and start changing people's perception. I think us as a university, it's really important for us to do what we do well, which is educate, and use education the same way as I said in Malakuta. It's helping people put words to their feelings. I've worked with clients, and I've had students who I've taught domestic abuse to, who I had a student come up to me after a lesson and say, I'm in an abusive relationship and I didn't know it until this lesson. So when you have that, and then from that space, and the same with a client, when you call it out for what it is, whether it's the perpetrator or the victim, once someone understands what they're doing, they might know on an intuitive level it's wrong, but then from that space, it's then educating people and really empowering people to feel like they have got choice and a sense of hope to make a change, maybe to improve that relationship, or in some circumstances flee that relationship as safely as possible.
So right now, events like bushfires, like COVID-19, how are they going to affect the counselling course moving forward? I mean, how are you going to, like, how do we bring all of this experience and these conversations into the counselling program?
Yeah, I'm involved in curriculum development for the new Masters of Counselling, which we launch in T3 in September, which I'm very excited about. And it's just awesome because we do a thing known as Subject Summit, and we've had a number in the last 2 weeks, and that is where we shape the content within that course. So we'd already earmarked domestic abuse across a number of subjects, and obviously with Kamaljeet's passing, that has just become so much more real and so much more essential to what we do in that space. And I think as well, the other part, when we're looking at things like bushfires, when we're looking at the pandemic that we're all living at the moment, the importance of connection. So isolation, we know, is a huge contributor to people feeling depressed or getting depressed. And often when they are depressed, they isolate. That's one of the first things they do. And we're actually being forced to isolate. So I feel, you know, that in itself is a pandemic. So however we can connect is so essential to us, and we've got to find ways within the parameters of what the guidelines are at the current time, and that's where we've got to be willing to adapt and not be too fixed in our thinking.
So look, that is a beautiful segue to a video we filmed earlier this week. So we've announced that we are returning to campuses, but in a very particular context. And one of the reasons why we've made this decision is because we don't know what is going to happen next in terms of COVID, and we don't know if there will be another point where there'll be more restrictions. And we've decided actually keeping students online for their learning is the best thing to do right now to make sure there's continuity and clarity. But having campuses open also important. And so we're creating this new initiative called the Campus Community Experience. Lisa, we're going to quickly go to Linda Brown and Clement Palagaru, who talked earlier this week, and then we're going to come back and Max and Paul are going to join us. Okay, so let's have a listen to the Campus.
Linda Brown, welcome to the first edition of the Racket.
Thank you, Clement.
We are focusing on health, well-being and mental health on this first edition of the Racket. Linda, firstly, it was very important that we upheld the health and safety of our students and staff by transitioning online extremely quickly. And our students have continued to learn and our teachers have continued to teach, which is something that you refer to a fair bit. Looking forward to T2, which we've just commenced this week, the burning question on everyone's lips is, what are the plans for return to campus? And are we going to get back on campus in 2020?
I think the first plan really is to, all the way through, continue the care for our students and our staff, and also the continuity of their learning. So we're obviously in this really precarious stage where every state is looking every day to see how many viruses have come out again overnight. The good news is Australia's done an amazing job looking at the rest of the world, but it could happen again. We could find another cluster. So what we've decided to do to ensure that students are getting continuity is keep online teaching 100% to the end of the year. Now, that doesn't mean to say that there will not be campus experiences. We absolutely get the value of that, but we want all students to have a choice. And if they want to continue studying 100% online with their assessments, with their same academics and their same schedule, that will continue until the end of the year. But what we will also do is do this new form of campus experience that allows students to come to campus, create community, and have opportunity to use the facilities.
And we'll come to that in just a moment, but I just wanted to clarify also that this is a staged return to campus, isn't it? Tell
Absolutely.
us a bit about that approach.
Absolutely. The most important thing is to get the practical aspects of learning back up as quickly as possible. Nursing, hospitality, design, business, social entrepreneurship hubs. Every single one of our programs, and we pride ourselves on this, has a work integrated learning component. It's about the head, the hand, and the heart. It's about the knowledge you learn, but also how you apply that knowledge. Our health clinics are a way that our health practitioners can actually get hands-on experience so that that makes them more employable. So our first priority will be to get the practical aspects back opened up on campus in a safe way, following all the rules and regulations around social distancing, but making sure that people have got the opportunity to complete all the assessments that they need to get their qualification. Then we'll start to give every student an experience to come back in a staged manner.
And in both of these scenarios of campus experience, as well as the return to campus with practicals, students will be able to get more information directly from the people who oversee the courses, yes?
Absolutely. The program directors are charged with contacting the students, so the students are really clear about their opportunities to return to campus.
Now, you have been talking quite a bit about the importance of a staged return to campus, and it's not just about going back to, or it's not about going back to the status quo. This is about something you've just mentioned there, and that is experience, but choice as well.
Yeah, I think it was really important when we started to look at a return to campus. We initially thought, let's go back to the old normal. Let's take some subjects out of online and bring them back to campus for face-to-face delivery. But then we suddenly realized not every student has a choice to come back to campus. Some have health issues. Some just don't want to get on public transport every single day for a 2-hour or 4-hour lecture. That's their choice. So what we decided as a team was that we would keep the integrity of online, keep it 100% contained so that if you don't want to return to campus, you still can gain your qualification. But knowing that connection's important, knowing that our students' mental health is important, let's give students an opportunity across the board to come back for sessions that will enhance their employability. They will be in addition to the sessions that you get online. They're at no additional cost. This is our gift to our students to get them back connected, back into the environment. And we'll have industry stars in there. We'll have different topics in there, so they'll be highly valuable, fun, about creating community, but also just sometimes opportunities to come in and use the computers, to use the library, to find a quiet desk in a warm place to study for a little while. But really important to us that all students have the opportunity across all of our 14 campuses.
Now, you've actually responded to feedback from students on this front as well, haven't you?
Yeah, well, we were going to be, we thought we had to make this super complicated. We thought we had to bring in all these amazing presenters, which we will do, and amazing industry stars. And it had to be worthwhile to come to campus because you can continue to do everything online. And students said to us quite rightly, Linda, we don't need anything as complicated as that. We want to come in and have some time that isn't managed, where we can connect with our peers, where we can connect with the support systems, where we can have a cup of coffee, where we can actually do our assignment in a space, especially if you're living in a shared house. So we've kind of unpicked that a little bit and made sure that there's just time for students to come into that environment if they want to, and to do what they feel they would like to do.
And in the context of what we're focusing on the Racket, this is about balance, isn't it? This is about feeling right, about how you're doing things, including study and life as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we were always concerned about was care and hope. And we pivoted, as you said, Clement, really quickly to online. And I am, totally proud of our online experience. You know, we've had 500 teachers over the last 6 to 7 weeks who have actually done an online teaching course and upskilled themselves, even from something they were doing pretty well to start with. But everybody's got really, really involved in the online environment. But the thing that we knew that we had to be careful about and supportive and care about was our students' mental health. You know, students come to university not just to learn content, not just to learn a job. It's also about connection. It's also about community. In some instances, it's about safety. Some of our staff, some of our students reached out to us and said, we actually feel safer coming to campus than the situation we find ourselves in at home. So it was really important for us that we could open it up in a staged manner to ensure that everybody who wanted to connect again in a face-to-face manner has the opportunity.
And the fact that this does not replace or duplicate academic studies, and neither are students going to be assessed on this, means that the focus is on that. It is on connection, and another C that you mentioned in the past, it is connected, it is related to care, isn't it?
Yes, it is, because we all know we're social beings, and although we've done a phenomenal job, our latest assessment of teaching and learning shows that that's improved in T1, especially for our online subjects. Our retention is now as good for online learning as it is face-to-face. I think the only university that can say that in the country. We're doing lots of care activities for new learners and existing learners, like the virtual careers fair that we did on behalf of the whole of Australia. So we're creating a virtual community, not the same as somebody having that connection to place and having that opportunity to go and study in a quiet place and connect with like-minded people.
It makes a lot of sense, and I'm in fact looking forward to just seeing what comes out of all of these things that we're doing, both online and with the campus community experience. Linda Brown, thank you so much for your time today on The Racket.
Stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, and we are very close to the end of this first inaugural edition of The Racket. It's going to come to you from different voices across Torrens University, Think Education, and the Media Design School. Lisa Walsh just said that she's looking forward to hosting an episode because she's always wanted to be Oprah. So Lisa, we will make sure you get that opportunity at some point so you can channel your inner Oprah, and you've won a car, and you've won a car, and you've won a car.
Brilliant.
Just, you know, now listening to this hour and a half, just want us to all reflect for a second. So Paul, what is the one thing you're beginning to realize after listening to Max and Lisa and this conversation as it's emerged?
Oh, it's been incredible. I've got a whole list of notes that I've been taking as the other guys have been speaking, and I really liked what Lisa was talking about in gratitude and slowing down and controlling the controllables. You know, we turn on the TV, particularly in the last week with what we're seeing, and it can feel very chaotic, and we can attach ourselves to that. And I think that just really stood out to me to be grateful for what we do have, to control what's, you know, within our scope, and to just slow down and connect with those that are really important to us. So that's 3 of the 17 things that I've written down here, but they really stood out to me.
Max.
Yes.
What's the one thing you're beginning to realize?
Well, I'm just realizing the value of sharing experiences, especially from Paul's experiences, but also Lisa, your experiences as well. And that's been, you know, that really opens up some new thoughts for me as well about this whole topic. So I've really enjoyed that.
And Lisa, hearing from Paul, from Max, the videos as well, what is the one thing you're beginning to realize?
I think something that I've long realized in my work as a psychologist is we're all so much more alike than we are different. And I think through this experience, breaking down some of that professional and our public kind of persona. And I think this is allowing real conversation and real connection, which I love. So we're seeing people being vulnerable, we're seeing people being open, and I think the more of that we see, the better world we'll live in.
I want to say thank you to all of you for joining us on this first edition. This is if you like, a very live, very public experiment right now, because we hope this begins to become a platform that takes its own life and involves lots of people, and you know, that it exists on Facebook, it exists on different social media, but also becomes a living, breathing record of the conversations we're having. So for being the first 3 cabs off the rank, the guinea pigs, thank you, Lisa, thank you, Paul, thank you, Max. I want to also say thank you to the Queenscliff Gallery and Workshop here in beautiful Queenscliff. This is very biblical background here, but this is a gorgeous little gallery space here in Queenscliff. And really, it's important to get out to regional Australia right now, support local businesses, and buy art. Just, I mean, not even from here, just buy art from artists, because it's important. We've got 2, yes.
Yeah, buy local as much as we can, you know.
I think that actually the heavenly lights are starting to hit in now, if you can see, Lisa. We've got 2 editions of the Racket coming up shortly. So on the 17th of June, The Road to Recovery, Strategies and Responses from Hospitality and Related Industries to Coronavirus. And that's hosted by our very own Dr. Simon Pawson, the Associate Dean of Hospitality. And then the next day, on the 18th of June, Rainbow Success Stories in Design and Creative Tech. So discussion featuring queer women in design, facilitated by the Media Design School's Master of Design Program Leader, Dr. Maria Walsh. So we've got a couple of great episodes of the Racket coming up. And then Lisa's going to be doing her Oprah at some point. Paul will be in as well. Max,
I'll have to just access some budget for the cars.
That's right, that's right. So that is us, episode 1 of the Racket out. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.
See you.